Welcome. This is Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put Together Conversations. Welcome to the show. I want to thank all of the folks watching us on all the different channels. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, thank you for joining us. We encourage you to be part of the conversation. If you're on YouTube, you do us a favor, scroll down and hit that subscribe button and like the video. That'll help us a whole lot. Thank you so much. Everybody else, join in, share, invite your family and friends to be part of the show. This week, I have a cool friend that I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but let me give you a little bit of her bio. Let me bring up her name here so you guys can see. There you go. Dawn Greenfield Ireland is the author of several award-winning novels, nonfiction books, and screenplays. To date, she has 19 published books that consist of 3 series, cozy mystery, science, fiction, fantasy, and adult shapeshifters. That's pretty cool. Dystopian, sci-fi, romance, adventure, and nonfiction work, which includes online courses. 3 of her nonfiction books have won awards. 9 of her 15 screenplays, which are comedies, dramas, horrors, action, adventure, and science fictions, have won awards. She also has written 3 short scripts. Her former day job as an award-winning technical writer, which she did that for 34 years, played a major role in her fiction writing. She's detail-oriented, the organizational queen of the known universe, and never misses a deadline. So let me bring her onto the show. Welcome, Dawn. How are you doing?
Hello, Daniel. It's so good to meet you.
Good to meet you. For everybody watching who follows the show and knows that I always tell stories about how I met, we were going back on our memories. We were both trying to figure out, like, how did we meet? We know a lot of the same people. And I'm from Texas. I lived in Houston for 12 years. You were there for 45. You said?
Yeah.
So we probably know the same people. I probably saw you on somebody's board. And I'm like, oh, she's interesting. Let me connect with her. But thank you for coming on the show on the unknown.
I appreciate having.
So how are you doing? How are things? You're still in Texas, though, correct?
Yeah, I'm in the hill country right now, and just trying to figure out where I'm going to live when I grow up. Which is who knows where and who knows when.
I love that the way you said that, though, because I just turned 50 last year, and I asked myself, it's like, okay, Garza, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because I figured, like, we're always evolving and we're always changing. And
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like, stay young. That's all I can tell people. Stay young. Don't get into this thing where, you feel like you should act a certain way because you're a certain age. I mean, that's just, that's ridiculous. Just be yourself.
So folks, remember, folks, if you are watching this, you're welcome to join the conversation. If you are watching this on replay, you can also make comments, and I will make sure I get them over to Dawn. Well, based on your bio, there's a whole lot of story there. So let's just get started. Dawn Greenfield Ireland, tell us how you put it together.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a very long journey, and it's really quite interesting because so the very first book I ever wrote was called Second Chance, which is now called Prophecy of Fall, which is, let's see, where is that? I have everything right here. So here's Prophecy of Fall, first book I ever wrote. And so I started that in 1979. Did not know what I was doing, had never written anything before in my entire life. Finished the first draft in 1984. And finally, 33 years later, I published it. 33 years. Yeah. So it's like anybody out there who is creative, you just hang on, don't give up. Everything comes when it, in its own time, so I was 31 when I started writing. And like I mentioned, I did not know the first thing about writing. I had never taken a writing course. I just had this idea that came through my mind on my long commute to work. And after a couple of days of literally living in my fantasies. Here I am, I'm driving down Highway 6 and just, letting my mind go. And this stuff started coming into my head. And after a couple of days, I brought a yellow line tablet and kept it on the passenger seat with a pen. And anytime I stopped, I'd start scratching things down. Well, got to work and I started, typing what I had. And, after a while, I had a lot of pages stacking up. So that was really interesting. But like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. And I did not find a critique group until 1984. And that's where I started growing. I was around, dozens of writers. I think there was like 144 people in the group, and they all had different disciplines. And it was just so helpful because I didn't know anything. They knew a lot. And so, we would bring some pages to the group, and then people would read their pages and other people would give feedback, and I really, got a lot out of that. And to this day, I try to mentor as many, up and coming writers as possible because it's tough. It really is. Everybody needs a helping hand. Everybody needs to know, you're on the right track. Don't worry about what anybody else says. Because that's one thing that I want to bring up also is that, after all these years writing and, I have all these books, but I don't earn an awful lot of money because I don't have a budget for marketing, and it's all in the marketing. So I've had people, I guess they're well-meaning, but to me, they were kind of cruel, saying, well, what do you keep doing that for? You're not earning a living. It's like, well, what else would I do? I'm a writer. This is what I do. It's obviously in my blood because, that's what I do all the time is write. I don't sit down in front of the television. I just, I have too many things in my mind.
So going back, because that's really interesting, having your tablet, because most, like, for instance, some of us now, like, if I have an idea, I'm in my car and I'm like, hit record on the video or something, and I just record it.
Mm-hmm.
When that first idea you had, I'm like, I'm just going to keep a pad. And you talk about naysayers.
Oh, yeah.
What was the conversation in your head? Was there a naysayer in your head? And then was there a, yes, we can do this voice that you... Like,
oh, yeah, there was always a constant war, like, what do you think you're doing? What are you trying to accomplish? It's like, I didn't even have, good grammar. And to this day, I have punctuation problems. When do I put the comma? When do I put the apostrophe? It's like, so I have good people in my groups, and they, whack me with rulers every once in a while and set me straight. But yeah, I mean, writers have these conversations with themselves, and I guess it's true for most artists, any discipline of artistry. You don't really think that it's the best you could do, and you worry about what somebody else is going to think about. And it's like, you just have to shut it up and keep going. That's all there is to it.
It's the constant what if.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Blah, 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 blah. Shut up.
Now, do you come from a creative family, artists or writers?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, I grew up in a house where, this is what I saw all the time. My mother and father and my grandfather who lived with us, my maternal grandfather, they were always reading. So what I saw was, you had a conversation like that, it's like, and my maternal grandfather got me started on reading at a very young age. I mean, because I read, this series called Bamba, the Jungle Boy. And then I went on to, all the Edgar Rice Burroughs books, Tarzan, which was a huge series, and then his John Carter of Mars, and and then my grandfather had me reading Zane Grey westerns, So, and then my mother was a Barbara Cartland romance reader. She owned every single book, I swear to God. And we're talking hundreds of Barbara Cartland books. That woman was prolific beyond anything that I could even think of. So that's the type of childhood that I had. But my great aunt, whose name is Ora Daigle, Ora Daigle Nichols, was the very first woman sound engineer back at the turn of the century. She started off in vaudeville, and then she and her husband did sound for War of the Worlds, the Buck Rogers show. Yeah, she's on my website on the bottom of the About Me page. And she's been written up into, several books. As a matter of fact, there was a short little documentary on her that I just watched last week. So that was really great.
Wow. So there is some creative juices flowing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So because you mentioned like it took you 31 years to get it published.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be like devil's advocate, like, why? Why did you wait so long?
Well, it went through so many changes, probably 5 title changes. And then I'm trying to think, let's see. So somewhere around 2010, 2012, somewhere in there, I had gone to a writer's conference, and this editor told me, here's what you need to do. Your characters are too old. I had them in their, let's see, the girl was 28 and the guy was 32. She says, you need to take those down to teenagers. That way there you have 2 audiences. You'll have the young adult, and then you'll have the adult. And so I thought, oh, piece of cake. I will just do that, Well, I kind of got frozen, because what that turned out to be was I had to change every aspect of the book, because teenagers do not think like adults. They do not have the same circumstances. They don't have the same experiences or anything. So all that dialogue had to change. All the situations had to change. Everything in that book had to change. And I've got to tell you, the first version of the book, the one that I finished in 1984, I still have that, and it's in a box somewhere, but it was horrible. I'm not kidding. My female character cried probably 80% or higher through the whole book. That's all she did was cry. And it's like when I had pulled that out, like a couple of decades later, and was looking at it, it's like, yeah, I really didn't know what I was doing back then. So it was a learning curve when I changed the ages and changed all the situations. And then I got finished with one of those drafts, and I decided, you know what? Okay, so Delane is the name of the girl, and Tracon is the boy. He needed a rival. So off I went again, and I created a rival for him. And after I finished that draft, it was like, okay, this is good. This is really good.
So. It's really interesting, because it's like you the way that I'm visioning it as you're speaking is you have these 2 characters. You're like, okay, like you just met them. Like, okay, I'm meeting these 2 people, and then they're like, oh, let me introduce you to my friend. And you're like, okay. It's like, okay, so now we need to include that in the story, which makes it deeper and bigger. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, well, let me introduce you to my friend over here. And you're like, Okay, so now we have to remember everything about it. Does that make sense? Like there's this
Oh
ripple
yeah,
effect
yeah,
of meeting people. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah. Every change you make, it's a ripple effect. And you've got, okay, so I'm going to just change this little thing over here. Well, that little thing over there ends up in, every chapter, before and after. And it's like, there's just, it just ends up being a lot of chaos trying to figure out, like, okay, I've got to start reading this from front to back again, because I don't know what I don't know what else I need to touch on from that one little teeny change, so.
So now, as I read in the bio, you haven't stuck to just one particular genre. You kind of gone across. Is there a different method or different style that you do from one to the other? Like, is there different versions of you that write different things?
Oh, if you could just open up my head. It's a dangerous place in there. I don't know, it's like I have folders of all these tiny little, pieces of paper, some full sheets of paper with all these different ideas. And I don't know, it's like, whatever I decide to do, it fits in there. And it's to me, it's the same process. It's world building. You build a world, and all of the worlds that I have built have been, extraordinary. Like the Prophecy of Thal world, that's creatures and creature people, and also humans, and so it's building everything around that, and I love it. I mean, so that's that, and then this series, this is an adult series. This is my Shapeshifter series, where you can see there's an eagle. There's an eagle. That's one of the characters, and then there's a Black Panther. That's a totally different world. And I had read a lot of different Shapeshifter books over the past 20 years, and most of them have, oh gosh, it's all about, the person changing into their animal, and all this angst and everything else that they have, and all the things that happen, while they're a human or an animal and all that. And I thought, oh, so I went a totally different direction with mine, and I have tried to build this completely different shapeshifter world, where you have these two men. They meet, 20 years apart or something like that, and they both, had no knowledge of shapeshifting whatsoever. And on this one's 20th birthday, he shifted into a panther. And it's like, how freaked out could you possibly get? He didn't know of anybody else in his family that had any genetic abnormality, and never found another shapeshifter until he rescued Gage, who is the eagle that was shot down by a hunter with a bow and arrow. And so both of them kept going through life for the next 50 years, and they never aged, or they aged so slowly. So they thought, are we immortal? We don't really know. It's not like we have, a manual here that we can, look things up. And so I gave them a whole different set of rules and everything else that I have ever read about in shapeshifters. And I think that's why the story has intrigued me so much.
How is this not a series? How is this not a movie? I am so like,
well, get out there and do some hustling for me, will you?
Okay, so for everybody watching, this is Putting Together Conversations. My guest today is Don Greenfield Ireland, and we're talking about writing a book, rewriting a book, and shapeshifters. So if you're just joining us now, please join the conversation by asking a question either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. If you're on Twitter, I have it right here on my phone, so if you ask a question, I'll make sure to give it to her. So that was one of my next questions. Like, I know it's going to sound like a silly question, but it's in my head. Are writers readers? Do you read other people's stuff? And
Oh yeah. Well, I can't, I can't answer for any other writer, but I am an avid reader. I read anywhere from 2 to 6 books a week, all different genres, everything that you could possibly think of. I tell people that my television starves to death. It's starving, because I would rather read a book. To me, it's much more fulfilling. It's much more detailed, and it helps me as a writer because as I'm reading, I'm looking at somebody else's story and I'm seeing how they put it together. I'm seeing flaws and other screw ups, and it's like, oh, I better not ever do that myself. That is not good.
and now, because you've written scripts as well, and a lot of scripts. 'Cause as an actor, when you get a script and you're like, okay, so they want us to move here, or there's this action that has to be done, which is very different than reading a book, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But how? I guess this is another one of my questions. Like, do you put yourself in your character's place? I mean, like for instance, as an actor, obviously, if I get a script, I'm moving around my space and trying to figure out, mimic them, picture them. Do you ever get into character? I guess there's another way to ask that. Like, do you ever get into character and see how if that sounds natural, if that feels natural? Does that make sense?
Yeah. When I write a script, I take on, it's really kind of funny because I take on all the roles. I take on even the narrator's role, I don't know. And even when I'm writing a book, it's visual. Everything to me is visual in my head. I don't know. It's weird. If they ever, got a hold of me in some mental institution and took tests, say, we're going to pickle that brain.
So is it safe to say that there's you because you write the book, but is there parts of you that go into your characters? Like if we broke them down.
I think so. And, a lot of people that I know, whether, intimately or just at arm's length or whatever, a lot of times they end up in my stories, little aspects of them, little personalities, little habits that they do, things like that, I'm very observant. So, if I come across something and it's like, that's a weird thing, I'm gonna write that somewhere. A lot of people give me some really good, advice when they don't even know it. It's like, so it's interesting.
I can imagine that you're like a story gatherer.
Yeah.
Do you have a big memory of stories that you can just like, let's go through the file cabinet?
I have to have lists. I've written so many things and there's still so much that's churning in my head that I have to have a list to keep straight. It's like, I will be just absolutely stumped if somebody wants, a breakdown of who's in what book and all that. It's like if I have enough time to really get quiet and think about it, I might be able to tell you, but it's like, okay, make sure that, these people stay in their series, these people stay in their series, don't get everybody crossed together. It's like, it's a lot to keep track of. And then there's also all the people in the screenplays, it's like, oh, okay. So we've got, we got a lot of people.
That has to, I'll admit it has to be a little maddening at a certain point. Like all these people in your head, like all these people living in your head.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, it's like trying to quiet your brain to sleep is a challenge for me, because I've got so many things going through my head. But I've got to tell you, so I meditate every day. And most of the times in my meditation, I will get a solution to one of my problems that I'm having, whether in my real life or in my stories or whatever. So I always have a, pad of paper and a pencil or a pen. And same thing at nighttime. There have been times in the middle of the night, I'll be sleeping and then something will zip through and I will wake up and I will get up and write something down. I do not turn the light on. I have a little flashlight by my bed, or on my end table, because you turn on a light and sometimes it's gone, So I've learned over the years how to deal with this,
Yeah, I realize that ideas are like ghosts, and
Oh,
the moment you turn the TV on or something, they disappear and you can't see them again. That's really interesting. Have you, because as you mentioned about the solutions and meditate, have you ever found a solution to a real life problem as you are writing for one of your books?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really amazing because, oh gosh, things to do with technical writing back in the day when I was doing that for a full-time job, things to do with publishing that I do, all the time now. Things just zip in, and it's like you cannot be lazy and just keep lying there and thinking, well, I'll remember this in the morning, because you won't, because it's a zing, it's gone if you don't document it right then and there.
That's very cool. Because I can imagine, because like you, I meditate and I work with clients when we do spiritual coaching or readings or meditation or Reiki, and sometimes it's really interesting to be working with a client and they're talking about their things and we're pulling cards or meditating, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to do to fix my thing, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So I can imagine writing. It's okay. So before we continue, I want to remind everybody you're watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is Don Greenfield, Ireland. We're talking about jotting down your notes and finding your solutions in writing. But I mean, you go to any therapist, you go to any psychologist, psychiatrist, spiritual coaches, and life coaches, and it's everybody. We all have the same thing. Well, you need to write down stuff. You need to write down stuff. So, what have you learned about yourself in like the years that you write? Has it helped you grow as a person?
I think so. It's a very individual thing. It's a very lonely thing, to be a writer. You just, and for me, it's okay. One thing that I have learned over the years, or I've gained over the years, is how important silence is. Back in the day, back in the, the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, I used to be able to go to a club and get at a table, get a drink, and just have a pad of paper and pencil or a pen, and I could write volumes, and then over time, it's like noise started bothering me. So I became, more into myself, more quiet, no TV, no radio, no nothing, just, stillness. And to me, stillness is really good, because not only do you give your brain a chance to, I guess, relax and settle, and then things just start flitting through your mind, and, you can just reach out there and grab something and write it down, or, whatever you want to do with it. I mean, it's really interesting.
That's really cool. You talked about meditation and
Yeah.
how how did you get into meditation, and are you able to shut down? Because I know sometimes for me, and I think it happens to a lot of creative, artistic people, because it's such a revolving door of thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, everybody stop. Daddy has to go take a nap. um,
Yeah.
but how did you get into meditation, and what's your process to get to that point where you can block everything out?
Well, I started meditating in the mid 80s. I was working at Compact Computer Corporation in Houston, and it was actually my first big technical writing job. Yay! And one of my coworkers is the one who introduced me to meditation. She brought me to this little metaphysical church that she used to go to, and I tell you, it just turned my life around. It opened up all kinds of doors for me. It really helped with, I think, my growth into being a writer. And I've tried different forms of meditation over the decades. Trying with a candle at first, and then maybe a sound like a chime or a bell or something like that. And then, thinking about, mountains and things like that. And now I just meditate to silence. And I don't even bother trying to halt my revolving door. There's just no way. It's like you just have to let things go in, come out, whatever. Because there's no way of shutting it down. There's no way of shutting up all the voices, and all the little conversations that, your characters are doing up in your head and all that. So you try to just get as quiet as you can and just, go with the flow.
Yeah, 'cause, I know. I'm so glad you said that, because some people come to me and they're like, I can't just shut it off, or like I can't just go nowhere. And I'm like, well, why are you like? I feel like that takes more energy to fight it than to
Yeah.
just say,
Just let it be, just let it
sense.
be. And you'll find, I mean, at least for me, I find that, when I stop trying to shut them up here, then they kind of like, will let me have a moment of peace and quiet. If only I could train them for sleeping, it's like, that's what I really need to do.
Yeah, because with our company, my partner and I, we have different departments, and everything requires its own thought process. Everything has a different process to make it
Yeah.
happen. And so I'm just sitting on the couch. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get quiet. Oh, I need to send an email. Okay, okay, cool. I'm gonna be quiet. Oh, I haven't posted this on it. Okay, I need to be quiet. And before I know it, I've spent the 30 minutes just processing things, having a to-do list in my brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm gonna show them the book that you sent me. So this is so cool. I have the little puppy book. I know you can't see it from the light, so I'm gonna post it on here so you can tell us a little bit more about it. It is the baby puppy book. So cool. Picture right there. Can you tell us about this a little bit?
That is the first book I ever published.
Oh,
Yeah, not the first book I ever wrote, but the first book I ever published. Okay, so that was published in 2000, December 1st of 2000. So backing up, I think it was 1998. I was sitting at my dining room table. I had both of my boys' baby books. I was having one of those moments, one of those boo-hoo-hoo moments, and my dog Shasta was on her dog bed, and when I say I was having a boo-hoo moment, I mean I was crying. So I turned to Shasta on her dog bed, and I said, "Oh, Shasta, I wish I had a baby book for you." And it's like, holy smokes, you you're a technical writer, get your butt in your office and start doing something. So I took my boys, both of my sons, baby books into my office. And then I actually went out to a baby store and I bought like 4 or 5 baby books. And I came home and I spread them all out and I went through them page by page to see, like, okay, so what is the same thing that people would document for a puppy that they would for a baby? And that is how I built that thing. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have any experience in this. And then I met a woman in Houston who basically guided me. And she gave me the introduction to an artist who did all the artwork in that book. And so that was Gladys Ramirez. And it was a long, long process. And could not afford to have it printed in the United States, unfortunately. So it was printed in Hong Kong and got the shipment. And that was, it was out the door December 1st, 2000. And then it won the Independent Publishers Book Awards competition as a finalist in 2001. So, and that was really interesting because they called me and said, we have never seen a book like this. And it's like, yay, did something good. And here it is. Last year was the 20th anniversary.
That's pretty awesome. Now, does it, because you sent me extra stuff, does it come with all of these certificates and awards?
No, that's for the adoption kit. So there's the book, and then you can buy the adoption kit, which, it's the book, and then there's an adoption certificate. There's an obedience certificate, and then there's one that's called authentic credentials, and that is for mutts. Dogs that do not have that pedigree, so you can give your dog their own pedigree.
Yeah, there's a little postcard with all your books, which is kind of cool. This is totally awesome. I was like, I told Chris, I'm like, that makes me want to have a dog. Like, I want a puppy now. So
they grow up. Don't forget, they grow up.
How dare they? But I want you guys. Okay, so this kind of because there's a lot of folks out there, especially during the lockdown, that I'm sure sat down and thought, there's an idea. And like the guest we had before on the episode this morning, it's like, why not me? Why not me do that now? So what was that one? Because you're like, there's not a book. I want a book. And again, talking about those little voices, what was the thing that finally said, Don, you got to do this? Like what?
Well, I'm telling you, it was in that moment when I turned to my dog, when I was all, boo-hooing and tearing and all that, and, it came to me. And, the thing about people, there are so many people that get great ideas and they won't act on them. They just won't act on them. They may feel all glorified and everything for about 5 minutes. And then they seem to have this, like, oh, I can't do that. Who would care? Who would believe me? Who, all these, it's that, that yammering that's going on. And you just have to get to the point where you can understand that if you don't shut that yammering off, you're never going to get anywhere. You're not going to, you're not going to fulfill your destiny as far as I'm concerned. We all have our own destiny and the way to get there. But too many times people, even myself, I've had, I don't know, tens of thousands of ideas, that just zing through. And it's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. But the times that I have, these 20 times that I have, it's like, okay, feels good.
Because remind us again, what were you doing when you were driving and sketching down your idea?
Oh, I was driving to work, from, I lived up in Copperfield, up in the Highway 6, 1960 area. And I had to go all the way down Highway 6 under I-10 to Southwest Houston. God knows how long that was. I mean, it was, had to have been at least 25 miles. I don't know. It took a long time to get there, and all the traffic lights and all the delays and everything else. And it's like, one difference between me and Joe Blow out on the street is that I write down my fantasies.
But what were you doing at that time? What job?
With what?
What job were you doing during that time?
Oh, okay. That was before I started as a technical writer. I was an executive secretary at that time, and took care of about 35 engineers. So it's a lot of brain juggling and schedule juggling and stuff like that. But from that job, let's see, the R&D department of that company merged with the R&D company of another company. And when that came together, we moved to another location, and I was still a secretary type person there. And the really wonderful blessing that happened to me was that the managing editor of the technical writers came to me one day and said, she plopped something down on my desk, and she said, "Give this a read and let me know what you think. If something doesn't look right, just, make some changes." And so I did. And she did this a couple of times, and she told me, she sat me down one day and she said, "Look, you're wasting your time as a secretary. You need to be a technical writer." And it's like, there are people in your life that, they're like angels that come through. It's just really wonderful.
And the reason I was asking is because how many assistants in an office, how many people working just a day job in a cubicle, and they're thinking, "I couldn't write a book." It's like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
So we have a question on the board right now. How much time each day do you devote to writing?
It really depends. Sometimes, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. Sometimes, and a lot of times I break it down into at least 2 sessions. This is something that I learned just recently. Actually, last year, I did that NaNoWriMo thing, and trying to get that 50,000 words in 1 month, in November. And I discovered there that if I broke my writing down into 2 sessions a day, I got a lot further and a lot quicker. So I got my 50,000 words in 26 days.
Wow.
Man, I'm telling you, I just about burnt my fingers up, and and I'm not kidding. I had to just really, I had to take a break for like a week and a half because I was completely fried from that.
Okay, the next question says, how do you stay focused during that time? Do you disconnect from the world?
No, I am still, the cat mother. I've got 2 cats. I'm still the answer the emails and all this. To me, it's like, I think I get more done with this distractions than to, really focus. But I also have those days where I am completely focused. I don't want anybody to bother me. I shut the door so the cats can't come in here. And I'm just, hammering away. So, there are days when I could only write an hour. There are days when I could write, 6 hours. So to me, it's like, however much time you spend doing it, you should do it every day at least. If you're not going to write every day, you should think about your outline. You should think about, any problems in the story, or, if you have a zing go through your head about another story, you need to start jotting that down. You need to do something every day as a writer. And reading is important too. Reading.
It's at least for me, editing and putting things together. There's a discipline in being undisciplined. So if I feel creative juices coming through, I'm like, grab the laptop, let's start working, and then all of a sudden I feel drained. I'm like, okay, now you're just gonna force it, and it doesn't feel good. So I stop it. Grab a
Yeah.
sandwich or whatever. For everybody watching, this is Put Together Conversations. My guest today is Greenfield Ireland, and we're talking about writing. Why not you be the writer, and how we meditate and connect with stuff. So we're at the 45-minute mark, and this is usually when I ask my guests to share some words of wisdom. So, Don Greenfield Ireland, what words of wisdom do you have for the audience watching?
Never give up. I don't care what anybody says to you. You just, tell them that's their opinion, whatever, just don't give up. If you have a dream, you just follow that dream and you try to get to, your rainbow, pot of gold, whatever, whichever way that you can, because to me, it's like if you let somebody else pound you down, then you've just lost, part of your little angel wings, because somebody plucked them out of you. You can't let that happen. And I had a really bad experience back in the 90s where I was submitting a screenplay to I think it was a literary agent. And I got back the most scathing letter from that guy. This was for my dark comedy called Plan B. And this guy was just like poison. And he told me that, I had no writing talent whatsoever. And I definitely could not write comedy. And I should give it up. And I mean, I was just like, I was just shocked into, silence over that. And the one person who saved me was my UCLA professor, Richard Walter. He told me, he says, look, that guy is jealous because he does not have any talent. All he can do is read stuff and, sign people up. He doesn't have your talent. And I tell you, if it wasn't for him telling me that, I probably would have, given it all up. It was just, crippling to read that. So my words of wisdom, throw that crap out the window. Don't let anybody get you down. Follow your dream.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So if I'm sure, and I hope that some young writers out there or older writers, there is no age limit. As long as you can write, you can write. But what are a couple of tips that you could give somebody that's just starting off that you wish somebody had told you when you were starting?
Oh gosh, do a lot of reading. Especially read in the genre that you really are interested in writing, because you will learn from your contemporaries how they build their books, how they build their characters and everything. And for God's sakes, people, research, don't make crap up. I mean, you have got to research your characters, your whatever professions that you give your characters, even, if you have a setting of a particular town, or you're making up a town and it's based on some other town, do some research, find out what the weather is. You can go online, you can find out anything that you want these days, so put an effort into it. And again, follow your dreams, just make sure that you try to find a critique group. And yeah, a critique group is very important, because you share each other's, manuscripts, and you will learn things, through the course of, being with a group of writers. And you have to make sure that you're in with the right type of critique group. In other words, if you're going to write science fiction, finding a group of people that write poetry is not going to do you any good. You've got to be in with your right group. And if you cannot find a group, there's Meetup. You could always go to Meetup and try to find a critique group in your area. You could always go to the library and check with the librarian, see if there's any writer groups that meet there, or go to a university, put a note on a bulletin board that you're trying to form a critique group or you're trying to find one, and, build your own group and make sure that you're kind, don't let anybody, be nasty giving critiques. That's something I will not tolerate in any way. If, you've got a bunch of people and there's somebody that doesn't like that genre, I always tell them, look, you read the pages, you give feedback on the setting, the character, the plot, the pacing, all that. Forget about, your bias about the genre, and perhaps you can learn something as you go along giving this critique.
I remember early on when I was hosting, this is 2005, at Houston Media Source in Houston. And I just joined a show. I did a guest spot and then I joined the cast of the host. And I remember people telling me, you're horrible. You should not be interviewing people. But I was like, in my head, I was like, well, I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. And I could have at the time taken it as okay, fine, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'll listen to that one person that doesn't want to see me. But I used it as a trampoline. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to learn how to look at the camera, how to say, how to speak slower, because I'm a very fast talker. And slowly just started working my way. I've been now in entertainment 15 years, but it's like you. Had I listened to that one person who didn't like me for whatever reason, we would not be sitting here right now.
Yeah.
And then the research part, yes, because let me tell you, there are movies that I watch, and especially now that they're coming out with a lot of spirituality, and you showed me the crystal that you had on your pendant before we started the show, and Wonder Woman 84. The citrine that they talk about in the movie, which people don't catch it because if they don't know about crystals and stones, they don't catch it. But that is actually a manifestation stone. So I was so glad that whoever wrote that script, I remember the name of the person, but the person that wrote that script did the research and they knew exactly what stone to talk about. I was like, oh, they know, they did the research. I was so excited about it. So for all you people that don't like Wonder Woman 84, that's the reason I really liked it, because they did the research on the show. So it's really good. It's really good. So we're coming down to the end of the show. Is there anything we didn't bring up that you would like to talk about before we leave?
Can't think of anything. I think we've covered, just about everything.
So I'm going to put the website back up. But if somebody was going to your website and look at your books, if there was one book that you could say, this book will tell you more about me than all the others, what book would you pick?
Oh, it's got to be Prophecy of Thal. To me, it's like, I don't know. It's just that world, But then there's, then there's my new little book, which I really fell in love with the story and the character. That's just really kind of weird. So just wander around my website and check it out.
Because now I want to go read Bondad. That whole story
yeah,
that whole story just intrigued me now. I want to know what happens to these guys. What's going on?
Well, here's what happens to the guy. 4 books.
See,
You'll love it.
This is why it's so great to talk to you. It's like what could have been just a fleeting idea and be like, oh, I'm going to write a book. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. You're like, okay, let me take the first step and take down notes. Let me make it take a step. And sometimes, especially with clients who come to me for like spiritual coaching. I'm like, take that first step. You won't know what it's like till you take the first step. And I feel like listening to our passions and listening to our heart, and actually taking that step is addictive, because once you're in it, you want to do more and you want to feed your spirit more. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Follow your heart.
So, folks, this is the website. Go check it out. Get her books. Um, if you have a puppy, her first book, the puppy baby book, go check it out. Like I said, I have it, and we don't have pets, but I was like, how about a puppy? Like I was feeling the bug. But then don't remind me that they grow up, and I'm like, okay, we have to reassess this thing about the puppy. But thank you so much for coming to the show. I so appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For everybody out there, please go check out our website. We'll have it on the descriptions. Don, I'm going to put you in the green room for just a second. I'll be right back for you, so don't go
All right.
anywhere.
All right.
For everybody else watching, thank you so much. Remember that we have several shows here on Little Mexican Productions. On Wednesdays, you can catch the Christian and Daniel show. On Fridays, it's the Card Devo. And on Saturdays, it's Put Together Conversations. Check this out. The times are all Pacific Standard Time, so make sure you check them. And we're on 4 different channels, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So make sure that you check us out. You can find the links on any of our pages. Also, if you're if we're talking about books today, here's my book, Grumpy Bunny and the Colors Game. It's a book written for, I think it's dedicated to children, about guiding them through their energy and meditation. But it's really for anybody if you want to learn how to center your chakras and align yourself. Go check it out on any of these 5 major outlets. So go check that out. I want to thank y'all for watching. Remember, share the videos. Come back and watch us. If you're watching us on YouTube, would you please subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you can be notified every time we have a show out for you. Leave comments, like the videos. We really appreciate all that. Everybody on Twitter, retweet the show, and we will get back to you if you leave any comments. For now, I want to thank my guest, Dawn Greenfield Ireland, for being on the show. Go check out her book, all of her books, but the Puppy Big Book, which is her first book, and the one that I have here at the house. So check those out. For now, I want to thank you for watching. This is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together, and we'll see you